You are fantastic. Thank you. Paul McCartney had 3 wives and countless romances. But at 83, he finally admitted the truth about who really owned his heart. It wasn't the woman he married twice. It wasn't the mother of his children. And it definitely wasn't the one who took millions in their brutal divorce. In a shocking confession, Paul revealed a secret he'd kept for over 50 years. A love so deep, he said losing her felt like dying. The woman who saved him from the Beatles breakup. Today, we uncover the heartbreaking story Paul never wanted the world to know. Paul McCartney was born on June 18, 1942 in Liverpool, right in the middle of World War II. His mother, Mary, worked as a nurse, helping wounded people while bombs were falling on the city. His father, Jim, sold cotton, but also led a small jazz band in his free time. They almost moved to Australia to stay safe, but changed their minds. That choice kept Paul in Liverpool, a city that would shape his music forever. The family didn't have much money. They lived in a small rented house at 24 Road. Years later, that same house became a place fans from all over the world came to visit. As a child, Paul did something he would later regret for the rest of his life, trying to prove he was tough enough for military service. He and some local boys killed frogs and stuck them on fences. At the time, boys didn't want to look weak, and Paul thought this would help him fit in. Many years later, he admitted this was stupid and wrong. It's surprising because Paul later became one of the biggest voices in animal rights. He stopped eating meat, promoted vegetarian food, and even started a brand with his late wife, Linda. What he once did out of pressure became something he would use to show how people can change. At age 14, Paul's world fell apart. His mother, Mary, died from breast cancer. She had been sick for a while, but no one explained much to him or his younger brother. Her death broke the family. His father struggled deeply, and Paul quietly turned to music as a way to deal with the pain. Years later, he had a dream where his mother came to him during a hard time. She told him everything would be okay. That dream became the inspiration for Let It Be, one of the most loved songs the Beatles ever made. Music had always been around him. His father played the piano at home, and Paul started teaching himself how to play by listening closely. He also picked up a guitar, figuring out songs by ear since they couldn't afford lessons. One of the first songs he learned was 20 Flight Rock. That song would later help him get into a band. That changed everything. He didn't just love jazz like his dad. He also listened to rock and roll stars like Little Richard and Buddy Holly. Their energy and style convinced Paul that he could write songs, too. He was also very smart. In school, at 11, he took a hard test that only a few kids passed. He was one of just 4 students in his school who got into a top grammar school, the Liverpool Institute for Boys. The school was strict, but gave him a solid background in both music and literature. It was on the school bus that he became friends with a younger student named George Harrison. That friendship would matter more than anyone could imagine. On July 6, 1957, something happened that changed music history forever. Paul went with a friend to a church fair where a band called the Quarrymen was playing. The band's leader was a teenage boy named John Lennon. After their show, Paul picked up a guitar and played 20 Flight Rock. Lennon was impressed, especially because Paul remembered all the words. Lennon didn't like sharing control, but he saw something special in Paul. In just 4 minutes, a new partnership began, one that would go on to shape music around the world. Not long after, Paul helped George Harrison join the band. George was only 14 at the time, and Lennon thought he looked too young, but Paul believed in him. He even arranged for George to play guitar for Lennon on a bus ride, hoping to change his mind. It worked. George played a solo perfectly, and Lennon finally said yes. Without Paul's push, the trio that would become the Beatles might never have happened before they became famous. The band tried out many different names. They started as the Quarrymen, then tried names like Johnny and the Moon Dogs and the Silver Beatles. None of them stuck. Lennon finally came up with the name The Beatles, playing with the word beat to make it unique. He once joked that the name came to him in a dream. Whatever the truth was, the name worked. It became more famous than almost any brand in the world. In 1960, their journey took a wild turn. The Beatles were sent to Hamburg, Germany to play in rough nightclubs. They were still teenagers, performing long hours every night, often in dangerous places. They lived in tiny, dirty rooms and used pills just to stay awake. Local gangs threatened them more than once, and they sometimes had to run for their lives. But those tough years made them stronger. Paul later said that even though he was born in Liverpool, he truly grew up in Hamburg. Playing every night made them a real band. Then came tragedy. Stuart Sutcliffe, the original bass player and a close friend of John Lennon, died suddenly from a brain problem. He was only 21. Stuart's death shook the group deeply. Paul had never planned to play bass, but when Stuart died, he stepped in. He was left-handed, and the only one willing to try. That decision changed everything. Paul's bass playing later became one of the most creative parts of the Beatles' sound. If Stuart hadn't died, Paul might have stayed a guitarist. Instead, he became one of the most influential bass players in rock music. In the early 1960s, deep under Matthew Street in Liverpool, there was a place so hot and crowded that water ran down its walls. That place was the Cavern Club. Most people would have ignored a basement like that, but the Beatles turned it into the center of a music revolution. Paul McCartney and the others played there nearly 300 times. Fans packed the club so tightly the fire brigade sometimes had to clear them out. The room was soaked in heat, sweat, and sound. Workers skipped their shifts just to hear one lunchtime show. Teenagers stood in lines for hours hoping to squeeze in. What began as a local gig turned into something electric. The energy inside that dark cellar was so raw, it felt like something bigger was starting. That's when Brian Epstein walked in. He ran a music store, always looked sharp, and wasn't impressed easily. But when he saw the Beatles perform in November 1961, he saw something no one else had.